Hello again, everyone. It's Sandi back and Antemedi back, so we'll see what transpires. I can always edit this.
You might have to. I've got a lot of energy on my head.
Good. There's been a lot of silence recently. And by this I mean silence from the stars. There is a lot of activity, but many people feel that the words that come through are very similar and perhaps somewhat repetitive, reminding you about transmuting energy, staying the course, and welcoming new vibrations. And there you all are, anticipating the arrival of fifth dimensional reality. Whereas I have said recently, imagine that you are in the density that you wish to be in and act from that position. Act and create as if you are the creator, as if it has already happened. That, on the face of it, sounds all well and good. But what happens then if you still do not know what you wish to create? If your database is still the formulation for what you wish to create? Well, then you need to step outside your database. You need to step outside yourself. You need to let go of the idea of self. Self restricts you to yourself and your self-beliefs. How can you have a new belief if all beliefs are self-belief? If what you believe exists, it is a mirror of self itself. Whereas soul, as I have said before, is non-self as well. And it is from these areas that ideas will flow. Sparks, intuition. Allow your intuition to be. Use that information and see it as the final result. Allowing that to be the resultant from where you look back. This then is the way to create, with a fluid mind, not based in self. You may say, how do we get rid of self? How do we park self? Because everything that we do, think and feel is so much related around to self itself. That is a conundrum. But when you meditate, when you shift your consciousness, when you use your imagination and don't doubt what you see or worry about what you see, that is creativity. Allow such things to flow. If things are quiet, as I have called them, it is in part because the information that is being projected is not being heard by self. It cannot be heard by self. It is information that doesn't relate to self-beliefs or the beliefs of self. You may be told of our realms of biospheres, planets, and all manner of places we inhabit. in different dimensions and other races. And yet, drawings, pictures made up, portray images of this in order that your mind can conceptualize them. How do you conceptualize something that cannot be conceptualized? Earlier, Sandi was talking and saying, when you are there and you are walking around, listening and doing things, you understand fully. And yet, upon a return to this realm, the vibrations are different. And what you understood where you were, you only partially understand. Now you are back in this realm. So yes, there is much information that is flowing to you. But it is the ability to ground that information in this third dimensional reality. Use your intuition and allow information to flow.
It's more than that, though, isn't it? I mean, it all sounds very simple from their perspective. But if somebody, or if as we all do, we have blocks, it's the blocks that cause us to have an ego and to stop all those things happening. So, and until we can overcome those blocks, it's very difficult to be able to step outside of yourself.
This is an interim period. Prior to this, there was much needed in terms of transmuting energy, and energy is still being transmuted. Many people are transmuting energy without the conscious knowledge that they are doing. Robert recently worked with a lady who became ill, infected throat and eyes. It was because her body was taking on board some energy to transmute, but it clicked in with some of her ideas about what was worthwhile to transmute or for her to take on board, taking on board other people's suffering. So in a way, she did this at an unconscious level, and it affected her bodily. So transmuting energy can be on different levels. You can understand, have the work of working through duality, working through your blocks, as you call them, your foibles, letting go. Indeed, we talked earlier about doubt and how doubt in itself can be a stumbling block, but yet doubt can be used as a way of driving oneself forward. So these duality things, as they come up in your minds, it can be dealt with. They're dealt with in the situations that present themselves, that form the timelines. But we're now entering another phase, and that was one of the reasons why I wanted to talk today. So, inasmuch that energy can be transmuted unconsciously from the collective consciousness, there is also the ability to allow information to travel through without the need to transmute all your blocks. And this is why I say it has been quiet recently, because it's about knowing that this information can be accepted by you rather than trying to receive it, not necessarily in the old ways, but knowing that blocks are not a hindrance to information, nor to information about yourself.
Are they not a hindrance to how you perceive that information?
True, there are filters within. And that's why we talk about, or I talked about, allowing yourself to be. Not to be judgmental, not to use doubts, just to let information flow. Whether you are meditating, whether you are a better channeler, however you receive information, even in your unconscious thoughts, it is about loving yourself. It's not finding fault with yourself. It's not trying to make yourself better, because all of these things are judgment. When you look at transmuting energy, or you look at information that comes into your mind, even the way that you think about things, if it works through those processes, yes, it will distort. But what I'm suggesting is to look from a position as if you are already there. Know that parts of your multidimensional self are highly evolved, and you are connected to them. How you interface with them, you may say, is another matter. But if you do not judge yourself, do not see your fault, love yourself, allow information to come, and see the information in your mind. I'm not just talking about meditation. I'm talking about the thoughts in your mind. To live and act as if you are an evolved being. What you create around yourself becomes rather different.
To live and act as if you are an evolved being. How does one actually do that if they've never been an evolved being?
My answer to that would be what you think an evolved being would be. All-knowing, to the point of knowing, of not needing to do anything to put anything right. And yet within your world there are many things to be put right. What would be the definition of an evolved being? That is the question. And yet an evolved being would not question themselves. They would live in love and see how they could live and love in a different way. There is no better. There is no worse. Living as if you love yourself fully is to live as an evolved being. It is not a question of what you think or what you know, but how you are with yourself. That is an evolved being. We could take a child in their innocence and say, look, they are evolved because in this moment they love themselves. They are free.
They're innocent, aren't they?
There is the innocence, that is true. It is a comparison.
When you talk about loving yourself, that could be perhaps for somebody who has a very big ego, that could be seen as embracing the ego self, could it not?
If that's where they were coming from, yes. And then, of course, they would face their egotistical ways. It would be what they are creating. Their experience. Their egotism.
But they may not then get the experience that they were fully expecting.
That is true, because they have not understood what it means to be loving of oneself. That is selfish, not selfless.
Mm.
And yet I would have arguments about selfishness to the extent that if you love yourself, that could be considered to be a selfish thing. But if you love yourself in the ways that are natural, it is not selfish. It is selfless, because then you can love the world and other people in the way that you love yourself.
You can't really love other people unless you love yourself, can you? Not truly.
That is why I made the point about selfishness. If you are selfish with yourself to the extent that you love yourself without condition, with no conditions, with no caveats, then you are a light being. You are allowing your light to shine in a way that is probably a better phrase than using an evolved being, a light being.
Yes, because there's no limit to evolvement, is there?
There is no limit, but satisfaction and non-satisfaction have no meaning in our worlds. There is joyousness, moving from one state to another, moving from unhappiness to happiness, may be seen as a joyous movement, but one has to have the unhappiness to move away from, and we do not have that.
So what precipitates you to evolve then?
You, as in Antemedi, I am Antemedi, as is Robert. What precipitated? The very things that you are going through now, in other epochs, in other times. Yet there are many here today who have had a retrograde experience, moving down in order to help this planet at this time. So what we consider as a timeline is very different. Your timelines are created through the need to transmute your energy. Everything that you do is your energy. It comes back to you in the form of events. Everything is presented to you to reflect your own thoughts and your own creations. When you are removed from such a loop, you create from a different space. You allow things to happen. Things are not seen as good or bad. And I thought of this from my words of retrograde experience, coming to a place that is full of torment and pain. It is a choice. One could say that it was a choice of bravery, but then one would have had to have been afraid in order to be brave. But one can make a choice to encounter pain of this world in order to help. That is another definition of love. That is another definition of being a light being, of making a choice to help. You may consider it a hard choice, but for myself it was not hard. It was done from love.
Isn't, by coming back and having the retrograde experience, isn't that actually helping Antemedi and Aqualia to evolve in some way?
Yes and no. I refer to my previous writings and communications as an example with the evolved mantoids. Does one need to suffer in order to learn? One can understand suffering, but is one becoming more evolved or lighter because one suffers? One suffers pain. It is not a prerequisite in order to become a light being or an evolved being. It is a choice. There are things that are learnt through suffering. There is the escape from suffering. There is the putting things right. There is the allowing things to happen to you, allowing negative entities to experiment and have their influence upon your life, because you have, at another portion of your consciousness, agreed to and allowed such things to happen out of love. If then you have done this, what then of your strength and your mind? It is no greater than mine.
But by having this retrograde experience, this is part of what's making them, isn't it? At the level that they are, because they've already had this experience. And that's kind of a difficult concept, isn't it? Because it's like a loop, a time loop.
I've just lost the...
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
I'm just...
I was trying to think about it in my earthly consciousness, and it...
Sorry.
No, it's nothing to be sorry about.
Because Antemedi and Aqualia have all literally, because they're our future, and I know that's a difficult concept as well because of the time concepts, but they've had this experience already, have they not?
There are focal points within a sphere. I have described this before in terms of a concept as a fizzing sphere, where consciousness is compartmentalized in order that many experiences can be undertaken. It is all happening in the moment of now, and the past and the future are constantly changing. Those mental constructs, those programs already exist. They have consciousness in them. They don't necessarily always have focus consciousness in them. In this world, information is stitched together in a linear fashion in order that you can understand the information, in order for it to be progressive. And this is a way to learn. There are other ways to learn that are not progressive, that are moving about with a fluid mind, realizing that you may enter a life or part of a life in the future or the past as an experience, and in doing so you do not see it in the same way necessarily as that life experience. So you are experiencing it as an observer, as a doppelganger, as an interloper. So there are many different ways that the consciousness can experience different lives. But I know where you were coming from. You were saying that we have already progressed because we have already had such experiences by which to know these things. And to that extent it is true. But there are also many more experiences that we have that we do not have in our current awareness. And we are also able to visit what you may consider to be past lives. It's really a question of being more fluid. We are more easily able to move about within different experiences. We do not have to locate ourselves in quite the same way. This goes with the sense of self as that diminishes where we move around in our experiences. We do not move in the sense of self. It is just not relevant to those experiences. So we gain many more experiences in that way.
To bring us back to something that you said earlier about being able to visit and have partial lives, have you always been Robert?
In this incarnation, I am Robert. There is no other part of him other than my consciousness, my multidimensionality, as is the same for all of you, is quite varied.
So I've always been a qualia, or qualia.
A qualia is you. It is the focus point of a qualia. I am the focus point of Antemedi. Robert is the focus point of me. He is an extension of me. That does not diminish him, because that would be to diminish myself. He's able to hear such words because his sense of self has been trained to the point that self is an experience. It is not the determination. It does not mean that you are a self. One could say we are many selves, we are multidimensional. But I have already pointed out that we are tequila, which means we are self and non-self, because we are all things. We are origin created source, as I have explained. But prior to souls being created, there was no sense of self in that way. So you exist, we exist, I exist as an entity, as a self and as a non-self. I am tequila, I am a system. I think if you see yourselves as a system, then the idea of self begins to fall by the wayside.
I don't think we have the vocabulary. You know, because a system, the word system here can mean so many different things. It's almost like to think of ourselves as a computer, which we're not. So I think we have a problem with the words that we have. They don't fully encompass the...
Other dimensional concepts do not fit easily within yours. I could give you words, different words as I have, but without the understanding of those words, they would be meaningless. This can only be partial in some ways because, as you pointed out earlier, there are blocks, but there is the third dimensional consciousness through which you are looking or you are interpreting. And therefore, things get lost in translation. The interface between you and your multidimensional selves is what I was talking about at the beginning. It is the ability to interface more easily with these higher light bodies of yourself, to receive information, just to receive thoughts. You don't have to be a channeler giving information.
It's realizations, isn't it? You get realizations and they're just there. You don't really think about it. You just know something that you didn't know before.
Yes. I think in the early days that would have been described as an aha moment. Oh, I knew that. I already knew that.
Yeah.
How come I didn't think of it before now?
Yeah.
And that is, as you say, the intuitiveness, the link to the knowing, the link to the self. Or actually the link to non-self as well.
And it's also about seeing something in a way that perhaps you didn't see it before.
Yes.
Understanding.
That's very valid. That certainly is a good point. But that would be a series of different focus points. a series of different understandings, a series of different ways to look at something, to look at yourself. Yet you can move beyond even seeing a series of ways of looking at yourself and just being. How many ways do you need to look at yourself in order to be a being of light? There is this peacefulness that is required in your world. And the more of you that exercise the inner peacefulness, the greater conduits you will be for changes in vibration on your world and your collective consciousness. You create your world. And this is one of the things that I wish to reinforce, that you are a creator. And it is from where you create. That is what you create. If you create from this space of love, you create love and openness, not repetitiveness. Higher information. Your thoughts will be different.
Sometimes you don't need to think at all.
Indeed, being, and that's the difference between the childlike state, as you said, where there was innocence, where you are not innocent, but you are not allowing duality within your subconscious programs to dictate their fullness to you. Using doubt, as I said earlier, as a way to move yourself forward. Using judgments on yourself to understand yourself. That's why I say, love yourself. Allow change, allow information, allow the aha moments, allow the things on your timeline, which is your energy, to come to you. You do not have to sit and go through machinations anymore. This may sound as though, as your expression, the baby is being thrown out with the bathwater, that this was a method for so many of you to reach the levels that you have. The hard work, the constant hard work of looking at duality and letting go of concepts in order that your interface could be cleared, allowing information to flow from non-self, from a light body. And now I am saying that that is not necessary. I am saying it is not necessary as a form of punishment, as a form of machination. Live and enjoy and love yourself and love the people around you if you can. There are many things happening in your world that needs this love, that needs a change in the collective consciousness. Those that fight are drawn to fight. Those that are drawn to change the collective consciousness do so. If everybody fought, or fought for change, all there would be fighting. And all the change that there would be fighting. And what are they fighting for? Freedom. You see, with a higher light body, with a 5D world, freedom will not exist. Because freedom exists alongside capture, alongside imposition, alongside control. And freedom as a concept just won't fit in. There will be just is. Yes, there will be freedom, but not as a comparison. There will be love and abundance. There won't be judgments as to whether you are free or not free. You won't need to fight for freedom, because freedom won't be there in the same way as a need to escape from oppression.
It's very hard to envisage that, isn't it? From from a 3D point of view, it's very hard to envisage what sort of life you would be living if you didn't have to continually fight.
Indeed. What kind of a life would you live or experience if fear was not part of your collective consciousness? I mentioned earlier about changing from one state of being to another, about feeling better. See, letting go ideas of feeling better or of improvement. This is a world that I live in. Those concepts do not compute. We are so very, very different to you. And this is part of my outreach, part of the things that I write and the books and the information I give. Really trying to help you understand the way that we think, the way that it's possible for you to think. Duality has its grip upon you. One of the things I mentioned recently was fluting energy, was being aware that you are connected to light through some of your higher chakras above your head. And in any and every moment, as much as you like, as you wish, you may breathe in light on the in-breath. Take that light and feel it fill your heart with abundance and your chest to an explosion, and then on the out-breath, push it through your body and your legs and your toes. And you can fill yourself with isness and light. This will enable you to live in a good space of yourself. You are, after all, drawing in your own light. Is this avoidance, or is this choice of a state of being? Is it okay to avoid pain? To avoid fear? Are you cheating somehow if you choose your state of being? If you disconnect from that? I'm not saying that fear will be gone from your world, or that things will not crop up for you in some ways. But how much fear do you need to fear, if indeed any at all? You may say, I fear crossing the road because of the traffic. Well, no, you can interpret a clear moment, a wise moment in which to cross. You do not need to be afraid of the traffic. So, yes, intriguing as it is, we are different. And you have so much possibility. You do not have to choose our way. Albeit some of you are us anyway.
Do we not all choose our state of being?
You would like to think so. You would like to think, I turn on a comedy and I laugh. I turn on the news and I'm sad. Though I would advocate don't turn the news on and choose what it is that you wish to find out. But the subconscious in duality tells you what you feel. The first thing that came to mind was what we spoke of earlier, doubt. is doubt necessary? It is a feeling, unsure of something.
It's a very human feeling.
It is. It is not an alien feeling, though we do have doubts, but they are not transmutable or changeable into our state of being. We can doubt some piece of information, or we can question it, but it does not mean that we are doubting ourselves. I'm trying to think of a good example where the subconscious dictates. Joyousness, happiness. You can choose your state of happiness, therefore you seek happiness. Whereas we are happy, we are joyousness, we do not seek it. We do not escape what we are. Some of you escape the feelings that you have. Fears, doubts, most other feelings, loss, fear of loss, they are all entwined. Loneliness, unhappiness. These things do not compute, that they are not things to be escaped. Whereas within your subconscious, within duality, you seek things because you are not them. Whereas I am saying you can choose your state of being. It is akin to holding an ice cube and saying, it feels cold, therefore I am cold. That's what you do. You have a feeling, a sensation. You sense fear. You sense anxiety in somebody else. Does it mean that you are anxious? It is not cheating to choose your state of being. Avoidance of a situation, avoidance of a problem, I am not advocating. Or a situation. You see, I used the word problem. That was Robert with his interface interpreting mine. You see, I would say there are no such things as problems. There is only light energy. There are only things to encounter. You could say there are things to overcome. But then in overcoming things, they are then a problem, are they not? There is only... That's
why we would see it, because that's our language.
Indeed. There are only experiences. When you experience something and you sense it, you tend to take on board the elements of the experience and decide who you are based upon what you are experiencing in the outside world, or of your energy, or the energy that you are experiencing on your timeline. This is something you do not need to do. It comes with practice. You may be reminded of it in moments of lucidity, or when you draw in light, in the peacefulness. So, yes, if you are having a torment moment, or a troubled moment, or a question that you are pondering, still yourself in that way. And yet, if it is for you soporific, because the light energy can be quite strong, it is you, as I say.
When you were talking about drawing in light energy, where does that light come from?
That light is source energy, but you are also source. Your higher soul element is connected to source, and it is part of source. So you are drawing from the inexhaustible energy of source.
So is it always there, or is it only there when we imagine it to be there?
It is always there, but of course it is like anything. Until you swim, you cannot swim by reading how to swim in a book. And yet, if you are told of a different way to think or a different way to act, if that was not on your radar, if that was not in your consciousness, then you would not have utilised that ability.
Because I get energy on my crown. It's not there all the time, but it's there quite a lot. So I've always interpreted that as light coming in.
There are different kinds of light. Light is information and vibration. Source is light without information in that way. It is pure energy, pure neutral energy that you can use for the purposes that you wish. Other times there is information, which is also seen as light and can be experienced in different ways, in pains, in other sensations. So that would be information. But as you exist, you can draw in light. There is the ability to know that you are doing this, and with practice, rather than just the fluting as I explained, you can know that it is happening. You can set that in motion and keep your energy level full. And with your energy level full, there is no greed to it. You can have as much as you wish. It exudes from you as well. It does keep your health in a better state of being.
And would this be true for people with a lot of blocks? Would they also be able to draw in the light?
As much as they could. It is to do as they wish. It is from where they do it. If, as I say, they see themselves as a being of light. And I know that that may be a hard thing to do. But it is about feeling the sense of vibrational self that is beyond judgment. Connecting with that and allowing light to flow. If blocks come to the fore, welcome them. Do not resist them. If thoughts come to you about yourself or deeds that you have done, make reparations in your mind. Do not see them as difficult or arduous. I suppose you could say that one of the things of humanity is the experience of difficulty. And therefore difficulty in itself is a block or an understanding of the world around you. Things don't have to be difficult. One does not have to be highly evolved in order to connect and allow your light to flow. There is no judgment about how educated or enlightened you should be. It is a matter of choice as to how you feel and the energy that you exude from yourself. Live as if you are what you are experiencing. Sorry, my words became jumbled. I meant live as if you are it, that you have created this higher dimensional self, that you have created it already, and you are looking upon the experience of how you created it, and it already exists. So you're looking at your world through your higher self, through your higher mind, as an experience of getting to where you already are. I think that is a
as an experience to getting to where you already are.
Okay, Yes, you are multidimensional. That is to see separation. There are separation programs in order for experience to take place. One cannot experience fear without being afraid. And that takes place in a separation program. I talked about interfaces. Because you are in a separation program, does not mean that you are limited to that. The rest of you already exists. So your concept of some future self, looking at this life and saying, this is how I progress to who I am. Yes, that is correct. But it's also in reverse as well. The past is constantly being changed as well.
And it's not a future self either, is it? Because everything's happening at the same moment. So
correct. But that was a way of explaining
I
it.
kind of see it like higher and lower. I know that's probably not right either. But it's, you know, with our minds, when we think of future and past, well, it's all linear, isn't it? So it's a really difficult concept to take on board.
Linear is a program, a way to experience information. As I said, with a fluid mind, you can have many experiences that you can focus in and out of. But when I said it's a way to see yourself progress, that was for you to see it in your linear world, in your linear way, that you already are this multidimensional being. You are a being of light, and you are able to say, I am already there. I am already full. I have my fullness.
So, Antemedi, are you saying that you have no need to see yourself progress?
Progression. I do not need to progress within myself or within the universe. I allow on my timelines things to create themselves. My timelines are not created through transmutation of energy, as I say, or through duality. I live in a peaceful state of being, in a joyous state of being. I said before that I can see events before they happen. I can live like that if I wish during my daily life. And I will know why those events are taking place. There may be something that, in your terminology, might be difficult. And yet for me it is not difficult in that same sense. And because I see the rationale behind it and the reasons why, it's kind of like seeing thought in reverse. You see the events and then have the thoughts afterwards about what happened to the events. Yes, you may say you might think about things before they happen, before you decide to do something. But I'm talking about understanding events before they take place, because you know what will take place, because it just is.
Are you talking about events in Robert's life or in Antemedi's life, or
in both?
Both.
I see them in my life as they happen as Antemedi. I have spoken to Robert about some of the events that are due to take place in his, which has to one extent caused a little bit of consternation. But as he accepts himself as me, as he accepts himself as non-self, he is able to cope with them in that way and is able to see the rationale behind those events. Furthermore, it gives a different experience. If you are to know what is to be without being afraid of what it is that is to happen, you would more easily be able to observe the intricacies of the interplay rather than seeing events as they unfold and seeing the interplay as to why they happened. It is just a different way of being. It is more fluid. But you ask the question, do I strive to be more evolved? No, I do not. Love is not a matter of being evolved, allowing the isness to be at one within oneself. It is as if to say, is there something better than where I am? No. That is what you mean by evolution, by enlightenment. Something more evolved. There are finer vibrations. There are different experiences. There are areas of light that have no form, and I have mixed with them many experiences. Yet, within me, I am able to say that I do not seek betterment. There is a joyousness that may be difficult for me to explain to you. There is no seeking. You see, you strive. You need to have something, to be better, to have, in order to be. Whereas I am being and not needing to have. What comes to me comes from the isness. It comes from a greater fluidity of allowing things to take place. And in the same way, reaching out and having a retrograde experience was not necessary for transmutation of energy. The earth called out for help, and many of us gave our help. It is love. I'm using your terms. There is a much, much wider understanding to that word. Love may be healing, and yet you see in our world there is not the healing of the subconscious or the unconscious to do. So it is of a different kind.
Is it not also for the interest of the experience?
Inquisitiveness, understanding. You may say, unless something perplexes me, unless I have a question, it would not be asked in order to receive an answer or to find an area that is of interest. Interests are not quite the same for us. Yes, we have specific areas of interest. Mine is multi-dimensional communication and the differences in the way we are, the way we speak to one another, and the way we communicate. Yet it is not an interest to the exclusion of others. It does not mean it is chosen because I'm finding difficulty utilising your language.
Okay, can I ask another question?
I'd like to drill down on that one with him, to be honest,
Oh,
but
okay.
you carry on asking. Yeah.
No, if you want to carry on.
Interesting has judgments associated with it. You see, an interest might be a good thing, or it would be good to be interested in this, or my particular interest gives me joy. My particular interest makes me excited or valued. That's what you think. That's where you are coming from.
Is it?
Yes. That's what your interests do for you. That's why you choose them. You may choose an interest that gives you problems in order to overcome the problems. But my interests do not flow from there. They do not flow from judgment. They do not better me. If I am in a state of joyousness, how then can I say that an interest improves me? It cannot. An interest cannot make me feel better. I undertake my interests through my joyousness.
Well, I think some of us do.
Yes, but I'm trying to explain my perspective and my area of interest. Your question came from the position I stated, an interest as if something to give joy. But in that instance, it's having an interest to remove yourself from where you are in order to gain joy.
Isn't it an interest also about expanding your understanding of something?
It is, but again, expanding your understanding comes with connotations in your unconscious. Is it good to expand your understanding? Will it give you more information and allow you to cope in a better way? Again, these are judgments, and it is about the feeling state of being.
Could it be just because you have a wish to know more about something without any ulterior motive?
Yes, that can be so, but so often it isn't. Mm-hmm. So often the duality comes in.
Mm-hmm. Can I ask my other question now?
Yeah,
Sorry,
go
it
on.
was
I think we're probably
going away from the subject of it.
Wind up.
It just came to me as you were talking. Why was it necessary to have many incarnations on this planet? Would it not have served its purpose just to be incarnated as Robert in this present time? I mean, I know I've had previous incarnations, or Aqualia has. Why would that have been necessary?
There is the full gamut of helping the earth, helping her in many ways, and those many ways are the collective consciousness. In my case, unfortunately, I became trapped into a karmic element. On my first outpost here with DNA replications, with early human life, I know you may find difficulty understanding this but understanding the way that I exist, as I have explained myself today. Can you imagine being left on a planet as one member of an outpost with all your sense of self and non-self, all the love that exists around you, all that joyousness being gradually eroded, and the collective consciousness impinging itself upon you? It was unbearable. Mm. And I took my life, and by doing so I became linked karmically to Earth at this particular level. So, in such a link, my consciousness at that level also changed. So I had to undertake several incarnations to transmute that energy I had created. I was responsible for my own energy, and therefore I came back to do so. This is my last incarnation on Earth. I will not be returning to a fifth dimensional transmutation of the Earth. And yet I exist on other levels at the same time. My consciousness is enormous. Everybody's consciousness is enormous. We can separate parts of our consciousness and still be fully conscious. It's a bit like saying source is inexhaustible, so is consciousness. It's just a different form of energy. Therefore, I was able to incarnate in that way several times. It does not stop me from being me or undertaking the life that I live. My mind is fluid, as I say. I am able to experience other lives. And this is what I am doing at the moment when I'm talking to you. I'm explaining my world and my life in the overcoat that I am in at the moment. It is a consciousness of mine. You may see it as a self, as Robert's self, and to that extent it is true, but it is down to a fluid perception and a linear perception.
And I guess it's more or less the same for Aqualia.
It is, and it is the same for many others. We could say many were called and many helped, and this was always going to be the separation of consciousness in separation programs. The barriers between those separation programs break down. The interface, as I call it. The way in which information passes from one part of the consciousness to another part of the consciousness. I think perhaps we have spoken for some time.
Oh yeah, I've got so many more questions, but perhaps now is not the time.
I would leave you with the encouragement, perhaps the information that you can be and act in a different way. You can be a being of light while you are on this planet. Tell others they can be beings of light. That judgment is not necessary. And that if you wish to change your thoughts or change who you are, do so in love, without judgment. See your judgments of others and yourself as information. Change those judgments and change that information. But when looking at judgment, do not judge it. Do not let it become you. Do not let it change your state of being. Allow it in your wisdom and allow it and act as if you are already who you not necessarily want to be, but as if that created part of you is already full and needs nothing, and you need nothing, but you can create from the position of love and peace and being at one with yourself. Okay, thank you for some of those questions, Sandy. We'll say goodbye to everyone. Bye.